So back in 2024, I think it was in September or October or something, CBS released a brand new spin-off to the NCIS series, which is one of my favorite shows. I've kept up with every season pretty much since the beginning. They're on season like 25, I think, or something now. So it's one of those really long-running police drama shows. And they recently released a spin-off of it called NCIS Origins, which is basically a look back at the past of pretty much the main character of the NCIS series for pretty much almost every season until he left the show, Leroy Jethro Gibbs. It's kind of a look back at his history in NCIS, like when he first started off and everything else.
The newly minted Special Agent Gibbs. Ready to catch some bad guys?
And if you're an NCIS fan, go check out my video I did where I kind of gave my thoughts on the series after watching the first episode and everything. I did that last year, like when it came out and stuff, so kind of go check that out if you're a fan of the NCIS series overall and everything. But in that series, I kind of talked about how one of the things I liked was that it was being narrated by present-day Gibbs, who is, as we know from the last episode that he was on in the main series before he kind of just like retired, not just from the show with the actor Mark Harmon retiring from being on the show, but the character also retired and went to live, I think it was in Alaska, if I'm not mistaken.
No matter how hard you try, or how far you go,
Watch your step, Marine.
You're on my squad?
Nope, you're on mine.
you can't ever leave it all behind. They kept me up. A voice, a scream, the kind you feel instead of hear.
So that was kind of a nice way to sort of bring him back into the NCIS universe and show that he's still out there somewhere doing something. And in this case, it was, creating a journal or whatever, or telling somebody about his past, I guess. But now that season 2 is approaching in a couple of days here as of this recording, I kind of thought of something. Why is Gibbs narrating this series? Like, what is the real point of this series? Why is Gibbs telling these stories of his past all of a sudden, given what we know about Gibbs and everything? And after giving it some thought, I came up with a theory that I think makes the most sense and is kind of a fun way to tie things together with the main NCIS series and NCIS Origins. So, without further delay, here's why I think Gibbs is actually telling the story of NCIS Origins. Now, like I said, if you are a fan of NCIS, then you know the kind of character and the kind of person that Leroy Jethro Gibbs really is. He's this guy who pretty much keeps everything locked up tight inside himself. He's not one to confess his emotions to people. He doesn't tell people about his past and that kind of stuff. Maybe because he's ashamed of it, or maybe because he's done some things that are questionable that could get him arrested or get others around him in trouble. So he kind of keeps all that locked away and doesn't really ever talk about any of that kind of stuff that much. And that's kind of been a big part of his character, and it's been something that a lot of the other characters on the show have noticed about him as well, is that he is this very secretive person, and even people close to him try to get him to talk about things and talk about his emotions and everything. He is not willing to talk about that kind of stuff, and that's just kind of the person that he is. So with that in mind, that got me thinking, why all of a sudden is he doing this? Why is he telling about these things that happened to him in the past when he was first in NCIS, or in that case at the time it was known as NIS? Why is he suddenly writing all this down in a journal or whatever, as we saw, I think, in that first episode of Origins, where it showed him sitting by a campfire, writing this all down or whatever, and kind of talking to himself or narrating to somebody about the things that happened in his past. Why now is he doing that? What is happening that's making him suddenly want to confess all these things or tell things about his past that he's never really told anyone else before? And I think I have a reason for that. I think the reason that they're doing this is because present-day Gibbs is dying. I think whether it's from some kind of illness or he's just getting up there in age. I think Gibbs knows that he's dying, and he wants to confess to the world like the kind of person that he actually is, the kind of things that actually happened in his past, that maybe he's not this saint that a lot of people make him out to be, or this like icon, that this figure that people can like turn to and everything. You know, people look up to him and look to him as this father figure. And now that he's confessing the sins of his past, basically, or things that have gone wrong back in his early days of NCIS, he's confessing all of this now. I think it's for that purpose, where he wants people to know what really happened, so that they don't look at him in the wrong light when he does pass away. He doesn't take these secrets to the grave with him.
This is a story I don't tell.
Because we know he is a man with a very checkered past. You know, he has a lot that's happened to him in the past. You know, his wife and daughter were killed, and he killed the man that killed them and everything, and that was kind of kept a secret for a long time. Like, some people very close to him like know that, and they've been forced to kind of keep it a secret as well, so that they don't tarnish his reputation and his legacy and everything. And so that's kind of one of the things that he sort of wants people to know about. Like, this is, if you look at this series, is basically almost like a confessional or a testimonial from Gibbs to the rest of the world, or anybody that would read this journal that he's writing. I think it kind of all of a sudden makes a little bit more sense. I think they didn't just make this series just to have a series about one of the main characters and their past. I think it goes a lot deeper than that, and they created this series with the intent of being a send-off for Gibbs while keeping his legacy sort of alive in the main NCIS universe. And I think the way that this is all going to play out is that Gibbs is going to write all these things in this journal, and, you know, through the lens of NCIS Origins, we're going to get to see maybe a couple seasons of that or whatever, and get to see these things that he's talking about play out, as we've seen so far from season 1 and what's coming up in season 2 and everything. And then I think they're going to have an episode of the regular NCIS series where McGee receives this journal in the mail from Gibbs, and we'll find out later on in that series, or in that episode, I mean, that Gibbs passed away, and he wrote a letter to McGee and the others that are on the team, whoever's on the team at the time that they get this letter, and he just kind of says, this is I want people to know this about me. I want the world to know the truth about me and what happened in my past, or something along those lines. And I think this is meant to be his sort of confession to his old friends like McGee, or even maybe DiNozzo they could bring in for this or whatever, about the kind of man that he really is, and he doesn't want the world to look at him in the wrong light as he passes away. So he's writing this journal about his past, he's writing these things down so that McGee, who looks up to him and looked at him as a father figure and everything, now can look at him and think like, well, I don't really want to be like him anymore, because he's got a lot of like history and things that he did wrong that maybe I shouldn't do those things. It could be like a sort of guide to up and coming NCIS agents or something, to teach them like what not to do, what kind of mistakes to avoid when they're coming up in the rankings of NCIS and everything else. I think that would be a cool way to pay tribute to the character of Gibbs, and to give him an even better send-off than the one that they did before where he just retired. Like, have that kind of almost like a crossover into the regular NCIS series by having that journal that Gibbs is writing show up on the show. And then from there, after Gibbs passes away, if they wanted to continue the NCIS Origins series, they could have it be McGee that is narrating it now as he reads the stories of Gibbs' past that we didn't get to hear yet, like maybe to his kids or to Delilah or whatever, or he's just sitting at home reading it to himself. Or maybe he could even make it into a book, and that's why Gibbs sends it to McGee in the first place, because McGee is an author, as we know. I think that would be just like a fun way to tie that all together and give Gibbs the perfect end for the series, while also tying two shows together that you wouldn't expect to tie together. Because I think if they were just going to make NCIS Origins just to be like set in the past and just to show a young Gibbs coming up in NCIS and everything else. If they just wanted to do that for that reason, just for something fun and an extra sort of NCIS series for us to watch, they wouldn't have had Gibbs actually narrating it. But because they did that, and because they have Mark Harmon actually narrating it as Gibbs in the present day, I think this is the reason why. And I think they should go that route with it if they're not planning that from the jump, you know. I think that'd be a really cool way to tie everything together and bring Gibbs sort of back into the main NCIS series and show that his presence sort of is still felt. They can have a whole episode centered around McGee receiving the journal or whatever, or them like flashing back to past moments like they've done with like when Ducky passed away or whatever, you know, they kind of reference things from the past and everything else, or just any of those characters that are killed off, they do like sort of flashbacks to it. They could have an entire episode as like a memorial for Gibbs, and then you have McGee like open the journal at the end or something like that. And also it can act as a good way to end the NCIS Origins series as well, depending on how far down the line they actually do this. If that is the route that they're taking, you know, it'd be like a legitimate reason for the series to end, like because Gibbs died, he can't narrate it anymore, he can't write anymore in his journal about what happened. So really that the rest of that story we'll never know, you know. But either way, I think that that's what this series is really meant to be. And I think that's the real reason why Gibbs is actually narrating it and telling this story in the first place. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments if you're an NCIS fan. Do you like this theory? Do you think this theory could pan out maybe in the future? Like maybe this is what they were planning, or maybe they will go this route eventually and like figure that out, maybe kind of do something like that. Would you enjoy that if that was the case? Are you a fan of NCIS Origins from that first season? What are you looking forward to the most from season 2? Let me know all that down in the comments section. Also, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more, and check out everything else we got going on this channel as well. And like I said at the beginning, also go see my NCIS Origins video that I did last year when it first came out. Kind of just some of my initial thoughts on it after seeing that first episode. And I've done a couple other NCIS videos on here as well, so seek those out as well if you enjoy videos about NCIS and theories and that kind of stuff. But with all that being said, thank you for watching the video, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.